My name is Lucian Trent. At my sister's wedding, her father-in-law looked right past me. Not a nod. Not a glance. Just that silent dismissal some men spend a lifetime perfecting. He walked by, comfortable in his suit, chin high with pride, while I stood there, glass in hand, expression still. He didn't know. He didn't recognize me. But I knew him. Roland Rowe. A man so proud of his last name he probably signs it in gold ink. For the past 6 months, he'd been trying, failing, to buy out a rising tech company. The same one I co-founded. The one his own business quietly depends on. He never looked deep enough to see it. Because people like him don't look, they assume. They see a title or a lack of one, and decide who matters. But I wasn't angry. I was calm. Because in a few minutes, when I was asked to speak, all of that would change. And when I said my name, when I introduced myself properly, he turned pale. I just smiled. They say the hardest part of grief is the silence that follows. But that's not true. The hardest part is the noise before it. It's the ringing phone when it shouldn't be ringing. It's the static in your ears when someone says the words you thought you'd never hear. For me, it was my college advisor's voice on the other end. Lucian, there's been an accident. Your father is gone. Just like that, I was no longer a son. He'd been planning to visit me and my sister Isolda the following weekend. Instead, I was packing a bag and driving back to a hometown that already felt like a stranger. I was 22. Isolda was 17, a week away from graduating high school. Our mother had left years before, chasing a second chance and never looking back. So now it was just us, 2 siblings, 1 broken car, and a future that had just shattered. The funeral was a blur. What came after? Brutal clarity. Debt. So much of it. He had tried to protect us from the worst of it. But once the obituary was printed, the creditors came like wolves. They took everything. The house, the car, his workshop. All we had left was a suitcase I'd packed for spring break. My scholarship covered tuition, but not rent, not food, not Isolda school. That night, after the last mourner left, I sat on the floor next to my sister. She cried, knees tucked into her sweatshirt, shoulders shaking. That was the moment I understood, no one else was coming. I was the adult now. So I made a decision. I would survive, for both of us. I picked up shifts at the campus cafe. Delivered packages in the evenings. Slept maybe 4 hours a night, sometimes less. There were mornings when I went to class still sweating from carrying furniture up apartment stairs. Every dollar I earned stretched across 2 mouths, 2 lives. I lost my girlfriend somewhere in the chaos. She was kind. But she needed more than forgotten promises and voicemail apologies. Letting her go wasn't easy, but I didn't have enough of myself to give. Not then. People talk about building character like it's some clean-cut process. Mine was forged in late notices and overdraft fees. It was built every time I looked at Isolda and chose to believe she still deserved a life worth dreaming about. Even if it meant setting fire to my own just to light the way. The years that followed. Graduation came and went without fanfare. No cap toss. No party photos. Just a quiet sigh and a job offer from a mid-sized firm doing back-end operations. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. And that was enough. We moved into a modest 1-bedroom apartment. Isolda took the bedroom. I took the couch. She started community college. I juggled spreadsheets and client calls by day, and every night, I cooked dinner, even if dinner was just rice and eggs. On weekends, I caught up on sleep and broken shifts. But even in the grind, I kept one eye on the future. I signed up for online courses, marketing, automation systems, SaaS platforms, anything that could sharpen my edge. I didn't know what opportunity would come, only that I had to be ready when it did. It came on a rainy Thursday evening. A message from Felix Marin, an old classmate. He remembered the way I used to think about business, about systems. He and another friend were building a tech tool to automate back-end workflows. He needed someone to manage operations and pitch to early clients. I was hesitant. It sounded uncertain. But it also sounded alive. And I hadn't felt alive in years. So I said yes. My life split in two. From 8 to 5, I wore slacks and answered to middle managers. From 7 p.m. to 2 a.m., I lived in codebases, flowcharts, and pitch decks with Felix. We worked out of coffee shops and borrowed server space. Some nights, I passed out with my laptop still glowing on my chest. Money was tight. Tempers flared. One co-founder left after a brutal 6-month dry spell. Felix and I stayed, barely. Then came the breakthrough. A corporate client piloted our tool and cut their processing time by 40%. They told 3 others. Suddenly, we had demo requests, feedback loops, inboxes we couldn't keep up with. A review on a major tech blog lit the spark. Interest exploded. But I didn't quit my day job. I knew how fragile stability really was. I answered service tickets during lunch breaks. Fixed system bugs between meetings. Saved every spare cent. Felix became the public face. He smiled for the cameras. Gave TEDx talks. I stayed behind the curtain, and I liked it that way. Because while others chased titles and LinkedIn glory, I chased something else. Peace of mind. A life where Isolde didn't have to count every dollar at the grocery store. A life where her future wasn't defined by what we lost. She got into a state university, on merit. I paid every bill on time. We had backup savings, health insurance, working appliances. That felt like luxury. No one saw what it took. And I didn't need them to. But that silence, that choice to stay unseen, meant people like Roland Rowe could meet me and assume I was small. And that was fine by me. I'd rather be underestimated than misjudged. Invisible than falsely praised. Full circle. Life has a way of looping back, especially when your little sister decides to get married. It was a Tuesday night. I just collapsed onto the couch, still in my work clothes, eating cold pasta straight from the container. My phone buzzed. It was Isolde, breathless, excited, and strangely hesitant. "Lucian," she said, "I have something to tell you." I assumed it was about school. A project maybe. An internship. I didn't expect her next words. "I'm getting married." My fork froze midair. "You're what?" "To Damien," she said quickly, like ripping off a bandage. "We've been seeing each other seriously for a while now, but I didn't tell you because I didn't know how." I blinked. I'd met Damien once, in passing. A polite handshake at a campus event. That was it. The dinner and the name. It was a Tuesday night when Isolde called. I had just collapsed onto the couch, still in my work clothes, eating cold pasta straight from the container. She sounded breathless, excited, but also strangely hesitant. "Lucian," she said, "I have something to tell you." I figured it was school. A project maybe. An internship. I wasn't ready for what came next. "I'm getting married." My fork paused in midair. "You're what?" "To Damien," she said quickly, like tearing off a bandage. "We've been seeing each other seriously for a while now, but I didn't tell you because I didn't know how." I blinked. I'd met a Damien once. In passing. Polite, forgettable. I never heard her talk about anything serious. "Isolde, married? That's huge. Are you okay?" She laughed, nervous but steady. "I'm more than okay. I'm happy. I just needed to tell you before things moved further. He wants to meet you." That caught my attention. Anyone who wanted to marry my sister had better want to meet me. Yes, I was her brother. But I was also the one who stayed. I had played every role that mattered in her life: parent, tutor, emergency contact, confidant. If someone was going to step into her future, I needed to look him in the eye, and measure the shape of his soul. The first meeting. We arranged a dinner for Friday. Casual. Nothing formal. I offered to cook. I still remember the sound of the doorbell. I opened it to find Damien standing there, flowers in one hand, a bottle of wine in the other, and a grin that tried a little too hard. Something about him felt familiar. He was polite. Well-spoken. He clearly adored my sister. We sat, talked, laughed, mostly about her. But then... his last name. Something about it tugged at a quiet memory. Rowe, I said aloud, turning it over like a coin in my mind. Any relation to Roland Rowe? He paused. A fraction of a second too long. He's my father. And just like that, it clicked. Roland Rowe, one of our biggest enterprise clients. The man who'd been circling our company like a vulture for months, offering partnership with the subtlety of a hand squeezing a throat. He was the type who wore power like a second skin, sharp suits, sharper words, and a trail of broken collaborations behind him. Not evil. Just hollow. Efficiently transactional. And now his son was sitting at my table. I didn't flinch. Didn't show it. Didn't mention the company. Or the emails. Or the dozens of ways Roland had tried to own what I'd built. Because this wasn't about him. This was about Isolde. If Damien was decent, I would find a way to make peace with the rest. Brother and sister. Later that night, Isolde pulled me aside in the kitchen. You went quiet for a while there, she said gently. Everything okay? I nodded. Just surprised. Do you really love him? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she smiled, softly. Like something deep inside her had finally been seen. I do, she said. He's not like his father, Lucian. He's kind. He's steady. He listens. I studied her face. She wasn't pleading. She was glowing. And she never glowed easily. Okay, I said at last, quietly. Then I'm in your corner. Meet the Rowe family. Weeks passed. Wedding planning took over her life. I helped where I could but kept a respectful distance. Then came the formal family meet and greet. An upscale country club, white tablecloths, polished silverware, waitstaff in black vests. Isolde asked me to be there. So I said yes. For her. That's where I met him. Roland Rowe. The moment I stepped into the room, his eyes found me. He took me in quickly, shoes, suit, posture, then looked away. When we were formally introduced, he offered a limp handshake and said, "Oh, you're just her brother." I assumed her father would be here. Just her brother. I smiled, just a little. Not the kind that showed warmth. The kind that signaled patience. Because I knew something he didn't. I had raised the girl he thought his son was marrying. I was the one who stayed when everything fell apart. I was the reason this wedding was even possible. And soon, when the mic passed to me and the speeches began, he would understand exactly who I was. You found something rare. Trust. Partnership. A future worth choosing. I paused. My hands were steady on the mic, but inside, something unspooled, years of silence, of carrying more than anyone knew. And I want you to know, I said, voice thick now, there's no one I'd rather entrust my sister's heart to, than the man she chose herself. I turned to Damien. Take care of her. Not like a possession. Like a promise. The room was quiet. Still. The kind of stillness that only happens when something real cuts through the noise. I stepped down. Isolde pulled me into a hug, tears warm on my collar. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. I know, I said. But I wanted to. Across the reception hall, Roland Rowe was staring at me. Not past me, at me. I didn't need to look long to know what he saw now. The suit fit the same. My name hadn't changed. But suddenly, his eyes held something new, respect, maybe even fear. He approached later, slowly, as the music swelled and couples started to dance. "Lucian," he said, his voice more careful than before. "I didn't realize you were that Lucian Trent." I offered a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Most people don't, until it matters. He nodded, swallowing a response. "Your company's impressive. We've been trying to schedule a meeting for months." "Yes," I replied. I noticed. We stood there, two men at the edges of a dance floor, not just from different generations, but different galaxies. He, the empire builder. Me, the survivor who became something else. "Maybe we could find time to talk business," he said. I met his gaze calmly. "Maybe." Then I turned, leaving him standing alone in a room full of people who suddenly didn't look quite so important. Later that night, I found a quiet corner and just watched my sister laugh. Her head tilted back, her eyes full of light. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel tired. Because this was what all the sacrifice had built. Not a title. Not a company. But a life. A safe place for the person I loved most. I didn't need applause. Or deals. Or headlines. I just needed that moment. And I had it. And somehow, in the middle of that joy, the boy who once carried the weight of two futures, finally felt free joy. That's what I felt standing there, looking at my sister across the room, radiant, safe, loved. And for the first time in a long time, I believed she was ready. I stepped away from the mic, nodded at the applauding room, and started walking back to my table. But I didn't get far. Roland Rowe stepped in front of me like a shadow materializing out of the wall. He extended his hand, his smile tight and professional. "Lucian, was it?" That was quite a speech. I took his hand, firm, not eager. "Thank you. You're the co-founder of Yi," he said, half statement, half question. I nodded. "Yes. The same company you've been trying to acquire." His smile faltered, just for a second. "I had no idea," he admitted. "Why didn't you say anything when we met?" I held his gaze, steady. "Because I wanted you to see who I was when you thought I was nobody." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "Enjoy the evening, Mr. Rowe," I said with a polite nod. And then I walked past him. Felix raised his glass as I returned to the table, one eyebrow arched. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. We clinked glasses. That tension I'd been carrying for weeks dissolved into the music and candlelight. The rest of the evening flowed with the soft rhythm of joy. Isolde danced like a woman finally free of the weight of old shadows. Damien was gracious, gentle. Roland remained civil. But something in his eyes had changed, not arrogance now, but calculation. That was fine. Because I hadn't said anything untrue. And I hadn't said everything either. We never sold the company to Roland Rowe. Not out of spite. Not even because of that first impression. The truth is, his offers were impressive, on paper. But I've learned to read between the numbers. His interest wasn't built on shared vision or mutual respect. It was built on assumption, on the belief that everything and everyone has a price. And I don't do business with men who only learn your worth after reading your resume. So Felix and I stayed independent. We scaled with intention. We didn't need a buyout. We needed breathing room, space to grow on our terms. Ironically, Rowe Industries still licenses our platform. His employees file their support tickets through the same portal as every other client. We respond quickly. We're professional. Always polite. Never personal. Strictly business. Damien never brought any of it up. He respects boundaries. But more importantly, he respects Isolde. Over time, we've built something close to trust. I don't hold his last name against him. He isn't his father. He never was. Isolde is thriving now. She's found peace, real peace. She teaches, gardens, volunteers on weekends. She laughs more easily now. And she smiles in a way I hadn't seen since we were children. Back when life still felt like it could break at any moment. That smile is what I fought for. That's the return on my investment. Sometimes people still assume I'm just the guy in the background. Quiet, unremarkable. And I let them. Because I know the truth. The people who dismiss you in silence are the same ones who scramble to respect you once someone announces your title. But by then, their respect doesn't matter. Real respect isn't reactive. It's chosen. It shows up when no one's watching. Roland Rowe's mistake wasn't underestimating me. It was assuming that being unseen meant being unimportant. But I've never needed the spotlight. All I ever needed was to know that my sister would be okay. And now, she is. That's enough. If there's one thing this whole journey has taught me, it's this: you don't rise by shouting to be seen. You rise by standing steady in who you are, quietly, purposefully, with dignity. And when people finally notice, let it be on your terms, not theirs. Because in the end, it's not about who applauds you. It's about who you protected when no one was watching.